Welcome, everybody, to Black and Gold Weekly. It's a weekly Boston Bruins show here on YouTube, brought to you in partnership with Black and Gold Productions. It is episode 49. We're getting close to the big 5-0. And as you can see, we have a special guest on again. Returning this week is Mr. Danny Jaillet. He was on just last week. But with the Bruins off to such a great start in the new year, he wanted to come on again and talk about it. So, Danny, welcome onto the show again. And thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you on, as always.
I love to hear my own voice. I figured I'd pop in again. Talking hockey with you is always a fantastic time, so I can't wait to get into it today.
Yeah, definitely. And we got a lot to talk about as the Bruins in the new year, off to a very, very good start, 3-0 since the start of 2022, a big weekend and then a big win last night on home ice as well. But before we get started, I want to give a big thank you to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show would not be happening without them. And can't thank them enough for everything that they do to support the show and allow B&G Weekly to happen. And also want to draw your attention, as always, to the links down in the description in the video. There are 3 links down there. The top one is for Boston Bruins apparel. The second one is for NHL apparel for any NHL team. And the third one is for NCAA college apparel, where you can rep any NCAA school. And if you're in the market for any of those things, looking to spend some holiday money, it's a great selection available down there. A lot of different products. You got all the usual stuff like sweatshirts and hats and jerseys, t-shirts, that kind of thing, but also some really cool accessories as well, and a lot of outside the box team branded type stuff. So if you're in the market for any of that, please check out those links in the description. It would be greatly appreciated. But with that out of the way, we're going to get into it here. Danny, I guess we'll just start with Boston. Kind of looked like a different team here in 2022. They've come out of the gate firing after a long, long layoff. And what have you seen from the Bruins so far over this past week that you've really liked now that they've started playing games again?
Well, for starters, you mentioned it, the long, long layoff. I think when you have an older veteran team like the Bruins, long layoffs, they may hurt some teams, but I think this long layoff helped the Bruins. It kind of allowed them to rest and, get focused again and, focus and play good hockey. And especially, and we're going to get into this probably a little bit later when you look at down the road and as these playoff races get tighter, that rest may be important. And, we talked about this on the show last week, but the secondary scoring that we wanted to wake up and make an impact and that I was, quite frankly, a little bit down on, they have finally started to turn the corner. And you heard me use the catchphrase last week. It almost sounded a bit annoying. We'll see what happens in the second half. Need to step up in the second half. And through these 3 games, the secondary scoring has come alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Just the sheer number of different guys getting on the score sheet, and scoring goals and producing offensively, and then every line is having such a huge impact, and they're getting multi-point games from third and fourth line guys, which we haven't really seen all year from the Boston
Nope.
Bruins. And we're going to delve deeper into that as we kind of go through these last 3 games on an individual basis. But the secondary scoring coming alive is a massive boost for this Bruins team. And I think, that's one of those things that can take a good team and make them a great team and make them an actual threat if they can get 3 lines going or 4 lines going and not have to rely on that top line so much. And I think a big part of this has been that Bruce Cassidy has completely switched these lines up. And we've got a total, new look from this Bruins team. We've got Pastrnak playing with Haula and Hall. That's kind of really ignited Eric Haula a little bit. And that second line's been fun to watch. Pastrnak had a huge goal last night, the game winner against the Devils. Craig Smith going up on the top line. I think that, he fits well with Bergeron and Marchand, and just the way that he plays and the tenacity and energy in his game. I think fits really well, especially along the wall and in front of the net, and the kinds of things that Bergeron and Marchand do well. Smith fits into that mold quite really well, and I think that's a good spot for him. Last night with Jake DeBrusk out, we had a new look third line with Steen, Coyle, and Foligno, and I thought they had a pretty solid game. Steen was able to score his first NHL goal. Fourth line has been awesome with Lazar, Frederick, and Nosek. They were the best line on the team, I think, in last night's game against New Jersey. So we're seeing such a greater balance right now, and I'm hoping that this can keep up because, obviously the lines got jumbled. We're seeing that pay dividends right now early on, but I'm hoping that this can keep up because if the Bruins can keep getting this level of secondary scoring, they become a much bigger threat in the Eastern Conference, I think, than if they just kind of fall back into being that one-line team. And it's going to be interesting to watch going forward if these secondary scorers can keep up the production like they have to start this year.
Yeah, and Bruce Cassidy has always, to me, seemed like, he can get his players to buy into the system and buy into what he wants to do. I mean, take for instance, I believe it was the 2016-2017 season after Claude Julien got fired, and the Bruins had a nice little run to end the year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that was at a time when Julien got fired. The Bruins were kind of obviously, middling in the standings,
Yep.
and they weren't really doing much. And bringing in Bruce Cassidy brought a spark, and they seemed to buy into what he was doing. We're seeing that a little bit here to start off the new year. He's not afraid to change lines, and the players seem to be responding really well to that. And I'll just kind of get into this a little bit because I know we're going to go through game by game. A guy like Trent Frederick, who we talked about, I said I really wanted to see him kind of step up, and I was disappointed with what he's been able to do so far. 2 goals during this, last week's stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what we were expecting out of him in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could say that for a lot of these depth guys that we were disappointed in for the first part of the year and up and through the Christmas break that we really needed to see more from. They've played great these last few games. Frederick has looked like a totally different player. I think Lazar's played really well and started to really bring it offensively and drive some play offensively. Howler's played better. Foligno's played better. Like all of these guys that were huge disappointments for the first few months, all of a sudden, again, like it's like this break was a chance for them to just reset and almost start over and
Mm,
put that first part of the season behind them and be like, all right, that's happened, it's done, it's over. We need to focus on moving forward and what we can do to improve moving forward. And all of these guys have come out firing after
yep.
this break. And I think it's awesome to see. The big question is, can they keep this up, or is this something that's just going to be a, few games and then it falls back to what it was, or are they able to keep this up? Because if Boston can keep this up, I think that drastically changes how good they are overall and what kind of contender they are come playoff time. A team that, is probably out in the first round like we saw early in the year, or are they a team that could legitimately make a run, which I think the team that we've seen for the past few games is a team that could legitimately make a run.
Yeah, and when you look at the secondary scoring, you talked about line pairings. I believe you said it was what, Frederick, Lazar, and
No
Smith.
sick.
N- No, so those are three players that fit a similar style, and there's not, it's not, Frederick, trying to fit in on a line where we have all these different skill sets. It's, similar styles in the way that Frederick plays, and he fits really well, for example, on that line. And I think
Hmm.
we talked about this last week. I forget the name that we mentioned, but when you put a player in a position that, it's a little bit difficult for him or a role that's he's not accustomed to, you may see, not very good results. Now, with everybody back from the break and the line shifting, we're starting to see better results.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, well, we are definitely
And
happy with the way that the Bruins have been playing to start the new year. we're glowing about them, but I do want to take into account their opponents that they've played. It's not like
Yeah.
they're doing this
Uh-huh.
against Tampa Bay and Florida. They've
Mhm.
played Buffalo, Detroit, and New Jersey, three teams that I don't see as playoff teams this year. Um, and obviously Detroit's been a lot better this season than expected, but they're still a young team coming out of a rebuild, growing. New Jersey's in a similar situation where they're a very young team, just kind of taking those first steps out of a rebuild. It's I think it's going to be important to see if the Bruins can do this against top competition. Because when
Yeah.
you get to the playoffs and when you get to the postseason where it counts, you're not going to be playing Buffalo. You're not going to be playing Detroit or New Jersey. You're going to be playing a team like, Tampa Bay. You're going to be playing a team like Florida. You're going to be playing a team like Toronto or Washington or Carolina or whoever they get matched up with in the postseason. Um, it's gonna be important that the Bruins can keep this going against high level teams, not just against teams that the Bruins should be beating like Buffalo, New Jersey, and Detroit, but against higher level teams that are going to be really tough matchups. And I think the schedule going forward for the Bruins is going to be really telling, and whether the Bruins can keep up doing what they're doing right now against those top teams moving forward, because we'll talk about that more towards the end of the show, but their upcoming schedule is not an easy one. They've got a lot of tough games on the horizon. So, I think it's going to be really important for the Bruins to keep this up and be able to play at this level against other, playoff level teams and not just against bottom feeders.
And let's be clear too, they didn't blow out Buffalo and they didn't blow out New Jersey. They had to claw their way back into the game against Buffalo,
Yep.
and New Jersey also gave them a challenge last night, Tuesday night. So they weren't even resounding victories against weaker competition. The Bruins really had to fight, which was great to see. But like you said, it's not, we shouldn't get our hopes up quite yet, especially when we've had to claw our way back against
Yeah.
I'm gonna say lesser competition for lack of a better term.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I just think that the fact we're so happy about these wins just shows like how we're feeling about the Bruins this year and like kind of how down they've been and how
Mm.
inconsistent they've been. The fact that we're getting pumped up over wins against Buffalo and New Jersey, or like close wins against Buffalo and New Jersey, are I think we've gotten to a point where we're just happy anytime the Bruins can get 2 points, because they've been so inconsistent and they've struggled at points this year where we're just happy anytime they can win no matter who it's against. But if they're going to be a real contender and a real threat, they're going to have to be able to beat better teams than just Buffalo, New Jersey, and Detroit.
And when you look at, a different sports league like the NBA, for instance,
Mm-hmm.
you can have a rough regular season, still tread water, and then, turn it on. The NHL, that's very hard to do,
Yep.
especially with the level of talent that each division has and the conferences have overall. So, you know, it may seem a little weird to get pumped up by these wins against, you know, lesser teams, but points are points.
Yep.
And, you know, we are excited because we got the points.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so it's going to be, like you said, it's going to be really telling what they do moving forward. But I am happy with the way they've started this new calendar year.
All right, let's get into it here, kind of breaking this down game by game since the return of the Bruins on January 1st. So first game was Saturday, New Year's Day, afternoon game against the Buffalo Sabres. Boston going into this game on a losing streak, very much needing a win in this one against a team that they should beat in Boston. And well, I honestly I didn't see the first part of this game. I only really saw the end of the third period and overtime of this game. I was away for New Year's, so I missed the weekend games for the most part. I was following along, obviously, on my phone, but I wasn't actually watching it unfold
Me
happen.
too,
So,
honestly.
um, yeah, so obviously they go down 1-0 here in the first period. Now Boston heavily outshot Buffalo in this game, 41-24. So that tells me that Boston definitely should have had the better of the chances and had more puck control, more offense, but again, finishing ability maybe not right where it needs to be, especially early on in this game. They go down 1-0 to Buffalo. Vinny Hinostroza with a goal in the first period. Not the way that you want to start on home ice in the new year. But then the Bruins were able to come back. Craig Smith ties it in the second period, makes it a 1-1 game. Good to see Craig Smith get on the scoreboard because he needs every goal that he can get at this point. He's having a down year. But then Buffalo, 2 goals. Jeff Skinner and Alex Tuch score in the second. Tuch's goal came right at the end of the second period to make it 3-1 Buffalo here heading into the third period. That's disappointing. That's not a spot you want to be in if you're the Bruins. Very, very frustrating. And obviously puts them in a position where they need to win the third period and come back and, pull off some sort of comeback win here. I feel like the Bruins a couple weeks ago don't win this game.
Yep, I agree. And, I think that we go back to, are they playing with a sense of urgency? I think to me, this game showed that they knew, what they were up against moving forward and that they needed to get some momentum. And as you'll get into in just a few seconds, they did that.
Yeah, I feel like the Bruins a few weeks ago lose this game to Buffalo, and they're down 3-1 going into the third. They maybe get a goal and get back within 1. They have a big push at the end, but they come up short, and it's just not enough. And the Bruins now, Nick Foligno scores 3:24 into the third period, finally getting his first goal as a Boston Bruin, which obviously is great to see. Foligno gets it back to a 1-goal game, and then literally just over a minute later, barely even over a minute later, Taylor Hall ties the game at 3, gets his 6th goal of the season, and Boston's back 3-3, tied up. And then from this point on is where I was actually watching this game, because I tuned in with about 10 or so minutes left in the third period, and Boston was pushing. I mean, they had a lot of chances as that third period went along to win that game in regulation. They were pushing hard. They had a lot of zone time. They weren't able to score in regulation. It goes to overtime. And then again, Charlie Coyle in OT with a beautiful shot, high glove side, able to win the game, score the game winner, and his 8th goal of the season. The Bruins win this one in OT. And just this is one of those comeback games that the Bruins really needed. And this was a game that they needed to win, and they were able to pull it out in the third period in overtime. And again, when you look at it from kind of a pessimistic standpoint, you were down 3-1 to the Buffalo Sabres. You needed a massive comeback in overtime to actually win it. That's not a good sign. But from a more optimistic standpoint, the fact that the Bruins were able to come back in this game and win this game, I think was a huge positive sign for this team and a step in the right direction, because I think a few weeks ago the Bruins don't win this game, and the fact that they were able to get goals from Foligno and Smith and Coyle and guys that they need scoring, Hall, all 4 of their goals came from guys that I would say the Bruins need more from, and they got it in this game.
Yeah, and I forget who passed the puck to Coyle, but that was a beautiful pass.
Marchand.
I remember
It was
yeah, okay,
Marchand with the pass.
That definitely makes sense. That was a beautiful pass. But when you look at this game, maybe that month off, helped them make that extra push in the third period.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really fascinating to see them claw their way back, because look, we know that it's been established that this Bruins team to this point in this year is not going to get a lot of sexy wins. They're going to have to, grind it out and battle it out, and they did that. And just looking at the stat sheet here, they had 4 power play opportunities, 0 power play goals, and yet they were able to take care of business on even strength. And that was also really encouraging to see, because you're not going to get many power play opportunities when you play these better, more disciplined, balanced teams, especially if you're talking about the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously you'd like to see the power play be able to come through, but
absolutely.
Even strength play is the most important. And the fact that they were able to win this game completely relying on even strength play is a very good thing for sure. And, you'd like to see the power play at least be 1 for 4 around there, but, you're not going to get power play goals every single game, and you're not going to be able to rely on that power play come postseason time because there's just a lot less penalties called. So the even strength win here was definitely great to see if you're a Boston Bruins fan. And some couple guys I want to point out because most of the team had 1 point in this game, and again, a lot of different players had a point in this game for the Bruins, but the only 2 players who had multi-point games in this game for the Bruins was Brad Marchand with 2 assists and Charlie McAvoy with 3 assists in this game. And I just think we talk about the secondary scoring and how many secondary guys have played a big role in this win and were able to get on the score sheet, but you still had production from your top guys there as well in Marchand and McAvoy having multi-assist games. So it's like this was everybody contributing offensively in this game.
Yeah, and one of the big words we used last week was balance. We wanted to see more balance other than Marchand, Pastrnak, and Bergeron. And, the Stars and Marchand and McAvoy were able to contribute, but they didn't have to do it all by themselves. They were able to get some nice secondary contributions in this game. And, I said it last week. I hate to keep using this example, but playoffs, Islanders, they were able to roll out lines and get scoring from everywhere. Many
Mm-hmm.
teams that are going to be in the playoffs, I think you said it, your famous quote, you can't win with only one good line,
Yep.
and that's going to be important once playoff time comes around.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about that. And again, this balance, this depth, and just contributions coming from different players and different lines is going to be key for the Bruins moving forward if they want to be a legitimate threat in the postseason and actually have a shot to make a run. But moving on now, next game, the Bruins just played the day after. So they started Saturday at home against Buffalo. Then they have to go on the road to Detroit for a Sunday afternoon game. I was actually on the ferry home from Nantucket as this game was going on,
Wow, the
and
ferry.
I was keeping up with the score on my phone. And this one was a more resounding win for the Boston Bruins as they ended up beating the Red Wings here 5-1. They outshot them 37-24. Another game where the Bruins vastly outshoot their opponent, and that's something that we've seen quite a bit of this year, where they're like pretty heavily outshooting opponents. It is taking the Bruins a little bit more as far as shots on goal to score goals. Their finishing percentage isn't exactly great, but these last few games, it's picked up. I mean, we had 4 goals against Buffalo. We had 5 goals here against Detroit. They're starting to put the puck in the net a little bit more. And once again, this was another game where they were getting contributions from up and down the lineup. So Detroit opens the scoring. Even though Boston's out shooting them early in the game, Detroit opens the scoring. Tyler Bertuzzi puts the Red Wings up 1-0. His 13th goal of the season, a little past the midway mark of the first period. Again, not great. Boston, if you're
No.
Boston, you don't want to go down 1-0 in these games. You don't want to be giving up the first goal. But Patrice Bergeron was able to answer a few minutes later, tied the game up at 1. And again, your captain coming through with a big goal, getting it back to an even game. And the first period ends with it being 1-1. You're in a fine spot, especially if you're the Bruins on the road playing the second game of a back-to-back. Never an easy spot. You're
Not at all.
1-1 at the end of the first period. Go into the second period. Eric Howla gets his second goal of the season. Another guy that we've been desperately waiting for to make an impact and start to get going with some production. He puts the Bruins up 2-1 in the second period. That's the only goal of the second period. And then things kind of explode in the third as Boston takes complete control in the third period. McAvoy scores a goal. They're up 3-1. Frederick scores his first goal of the season. Another guy that we really wanted to see get on the score sheet. He makes it 4-1. And then Nosek finishes it off. His third goal of the year gives the Bruins a 5-1 lead. And obviously, they easily hold on to that the rest of the way, and the Bruins win the game 5-1. Again, guys on the score sheet that we wanted to see. Howla scores, Frederick scores, Nosek scores. It's not just the top guys anymore.
Yeah, and let me tell you something. I was struggling the day after New Year's, but the Bruins managed to get themselves together and
Yeah.
and it's interesting again, zero power play goals. A lot of this was even strength play and they were able to do it yet again with secondary scoring. And when you look at, this being a back-to-back type of game, whenever I've seen the Bruins on a back-to-back in my Bruins watching career, so to speak,
Mhm.
it seems like they tend to struggle on, on back-to-backs, and who can blame them? It's back-to-back, and it's tough. It's the second game in less than 48 hours or whatever.
Yep.
But they managed to really, again, make that third period push. And obviously, you want, the Bruins to play a complete game and make a push for three periods. But if you notice playoff hockey, which I know you do,
Mhm.
um, these teams seem to get stronger in the third period when it's crunch time, when
Yeah.
the moments are big, and three or two even strength, no power play goal, strong third period games in a row.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you want to see for playoff hockey. So, yes, we're not in the playoffs right now, but having these types of situations and, succeeding in them can only help the Bruins moving forward.
Yeah, completely agree. You've got to be a team that gets better as the game goes along. Obviously, you want a good start. You don't want to necessarily be playing from behind all the time. That's not a winning formula, as Andy Brickley likes to say. But
Yep.
um, you want to be playing your best hockey at crunch time in the third period when it matters the most. And I think seeing the Bruins having these strong third periods to start the new year is a good sign because that's kind of the opposite of how they were at the beginning of the season.
I was just about to say that, yeah.
Back, early in October and at the beginning of the year, the Bruins were coming out, getting leads, and then losing them, and getting worse as the game goes along and losing games because they weren't good in the third period. If we can see that flip flop and have the Bruins be a third period team, I think that is going to bode well for them down the stretch and into the playoffs. Absolutely.
Yeah, and again, this is the type of formula that it takes to win a hockey game. Balance, secondary scoring, playing in adverse situations, this one being a back-to-back.
Yep.
And we're the Bruins have been put in situations that are similar to playoff hockey type situations, and so far they have been succeeding, at least this week.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll move on now to the last game that we have to talk about. It was last night's game. We're recording this on Wednesday, if you haven't figured that out yet by me saying last night. But yeah, we're recording this on Wednesday. So this was Tuesday night's game against the New Jersey Devils. Again, the Bruins outshoot their opponent 34-26. That's been common theme here. Bruins out shooting their opponents. They've been doing that a lot this year, and especially recently. But this was an interesting one because it was kind of a. I saw every second of this game. I called play by play for this game, so I got to watch this one through and through, and it wasn't a bad first period for either side, but it wasn't a real energetic first
Mm.
period, I guess would be how I would put it. It was a very calm, kind of just a go through the motions first period for both of these teams. There just wasn't a whole lot happening. Curtis Lazar scored the first goal for the Bruins. They went up 1-0. Really about 3 minutes in. It wasn't even long into the first. It was a bad goal to give up if you're Mackenzie Blackwood, which that's going to be a recurring theme throughout this game. But Blackwood thought that Lazar was going to pass it across, and he ended up just kind of sliding it on net, and Blackwood just let it go right under his pad through his legs, and he completely caught off guard there. Not a good goal to give up if you're the Devils goaltender, but doesn't matter how it goes in, it just matters how many times. And the Bruins get the 1-0 lead there on Lazar's third goal of the season. Again, another depth scorer coming in and providing some production here as the Bruins take the lead. And that was really the only thing that happened in the first period. I mean, there was not much going on. Second period, things heated up in a lot of different ways. Scoring-wise, physicality-wise, things just really opened up in the second period. And early on, not even a minute in, the Devils were able to tie it on a breakaway goal from Nathan Bastian to tie the game up at 1. And I want to get your thoughts on this, Danny, because this goal was given to the Devils by the Bruins because Bruins run this play at the offensive blue line that really ticks me off, and I wish they would stop running because every team in the league knows that they're running it and is completely taking it away right now. Carlo, so it happened to be Brandon Carlo. They don't just do this with Carlo. This is a play that the Bruins like to run in general, but Carlo gets the puck at the blue line. It's in the offensive zone, and they're trying to force a pass to the middle at the blue line to David Pastrnak, who's a forward that I can't really show this without a diagram, but kind of sweeps back to the middle of the blue line, and he tries to get a one-timer off. And Carlo's the defenseman on the side passing him the puck. But teams know that the Bruins are running this, and this is not the first time that this pass has gotten picked off this year. But again, Carlo tries to force this play into Pastrnak, and Bastian knows it's coming, just steals the pass and goes the other way on a breakaway all alone and ends up scoring. And I wish the Bruins would either stop running this play altogether because everybody knows that they're doing it, or at least make sure that that pass is open before you try and force a pass to the middle like that, because teams are reading this more and more. They're taking it away, and it's resulting in breakaways going the other way.
I'm gonna see if I can find the film, but we'll just talk about it while I'm trying to look for it. That type of play, and I think I know what play you're talking about. I mean, a play at the middle of the ice is always risky. That's why I prefer, plays to kind of, start along the boards. And if this is a play that they continuously use, which they have been, obviously, teams are going to pick up on it, and teams, there's not too many players that you can do that play with. So if they see Pastrnak on the ice and he tries to, make that play, they are going to know it's coming. And this to me was one of the situations where it was an unnecessary risk. And
Mm-hmm.
I get trying to like get your playmakers involved, but don't be too cute. Maybe I'm just being over simplistic, but don't be too cute. Just try to protect the puck, and because too often we've seen Bruins games where they make stupid mistakes in their own
Yeah.
zone, or they make unneeded mistakes that don't need to happen by being too cute, and then it leads to opponent chances.
Yeah, it's a play that they're trying to force, and it's not a spot on the ice where you want to be forcing plays and forcing the puck,
Not at all.
because any sort of turnover there is going to end up going the other way, and at the very least a 2-on-1, at worst case scenario a breakaway. And in this case it was a breakaway, Bastian scores, and it's a 1-1 game. Luckily, though, the Bruins were able to answer as Oscar Steen scores his first career goal. This was a weird one.
Yeah, I watched
Um,
this about 4 times, and still have no idea how it went in.
yeah, this was a really weird one. The puck was like bounced up on the top of the net. Steen comes with his stick from under the net and pops the puck off of the top of the goal, and then hits off the back of Mackenzie
Yeah.
Blackwood, like in his neck area, and then bounces into the net. And what a crazy way to score your first goal if you're Oscar Steen. But again, still counts, gives the Bruins the lead, and they go up 2-1 in the second period.
Yeah, and against a goaltender like Mackenzie Blackwood, who I actually really like, um, you're gonna take any chances you can get. And
Hmm.
I had to watch this play about 4 or 5 times last night to figure out how it went in, and that's just you're gonna hate me for saying this cliche, but literally that's the way the puck bounces. I
Yep.
mean, you just gotta take advantage of what you can, and it wasn't like Mackenzie Blackwood gave up a soft goal. That would be a very tough save to make.
Yeah.
I mean, that was just perfect placement of the puck. Uh, a fortuitous bounce, as Jack Edwards might say, and you know that put the Bruins in business again.
Yeah, and that put them up in the lead, 2-1. But Tomas Tatar answered not long after as the Devils continue to keep fighting in this game, and he tied it up at 2. This was a bad rebound from Linus Ullmark. The original shot came in from kind of over by the sidewall, and then Ullmark just pushed the rebound right out in front, and Tatar was there to rip the second chance opportunity. And if you give guys at the NHL level that kind of an opportunity from the middle of the ice like that, they're going to score most of the time. And the Devils tied it up. it became a 2-2 game, and then the Bruins were once again looking for an answer, trying to take a lead again, and they got it from Trent Frederick, scoring his second goal of the season and his second goal of the new year. As this was another fluky one for the Bruins and another goal that Mackenzie Blackwood would like to have back, but Frederick was from below the goal line and just kind of threw the puck towards the side of the net, and Blackwood was not holding the post properly. It goes off of his skate and into the back of the net and somehow squeezes through. And Freddie gets his second goal, and obviously the Bruins take the lead here. It's 3-3, or 3-2, excuse me, and that's how the second period ends. Bruins take a lead into the third period. Then it becomes about what do they do in the third period. And, well, they give up the lead. Damon Severson scores. This was another complete defensive breakdown here for the Bruins. Severson's coming out of the penalty box after a power play ends, and he gets a breakaway in behind Boston's defense and walks in all alone and scores on the breakaway.
Yeah, and it kind of looked like, at the beginning of the season when, they played strong and then just completely melted in the third period.
Mm-hmm.
And Mackenzie Blackwood, just kind of circle back, he's not going to give up many easy goals, so the Bruins did a nice job, I thought, tonight of just putting the puck on the net and making sure that they capitalize on every single chance they got. And in the case of the Frederick goal, he was at the right place at the right time, and that's something, being at the right place at the right time, that has worked in his favor lately.
Yeah, Blackwood did not have a good night last night. The goals that he gave up were, the Lazar goal he would want back, the Frederick goal he would want back. Steen's goal was kind of more just like a bad luck thing, but Blackwood didn't have a strong night last night. But the Devils stayed in the game. They kept pushing. Every time the Bruins took a lead, they answered. And Severson scored that breakaway goal, another breakaway given up by the Bruins that was really aggravating to watch, because I don't know how you don't know that he's coming out of the penalty box. Like, you have to have the awareness of knowing that the power play is coming to an end and that you're going to have a guy behind you. You got to get back. And that tied the game up. And all of a sudden it's 3-3 in the third period. It was 3-3 for a while. And it was coming down to crunch time. But then none other than David Pastrnak, who's taken a lot of heat this year for, maybe not having the best season, hasn't put up huge numbers this year. He comes in and an absolutely beautiful goal, driving the net, scores the game winner for the Boston Bruins to put them up 4-3. Only his 9th goal of the season, but he takes this puck out of the corner, drives to the front of the net. Blackwood makes a save on the first shot, but he sticks with it and rips home the rebound by Mackenzie Blackwood and gives the Bruins the lead. This was a huge goal for David Pastrnak. I hope he can build off this and really start to get rolling here offensively, but this wasn't a pretty goal either. This was a hard work, drive the net, stick with it type of play, and Pastrnak gets rewarded, which was great to see.
Yeah, he goes off of the boards, kind of crashes into the net, takes a shot, and then he's lucky enough to really get the rebound in what was a very tight window. And this is what we've been missing from him over the past, couple, even months, it seems. He hasn't really been able to get things going. And although this was by no means a sexy goal, this is the type of playmaking that he can create. He's a very good skater. He stayed with the play, and he made the Devils pay for even the tightest of windows.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's kind of a killer instinct from David Pastrnak that hasn't been there a lot this year, hasn't fully gone through to him putting the puck in the back of the net. But I'm hoping that this is a goal that he can kind of use as a momentum builder and be like, okay, got a big one, got a game winner, needed that, and can now kind of keep that momentum moving forward and hopefully continue to put the puck in the back of the net and be a key contributor for the Bruins. Brandon Carlo scored a late wasn't an empty netter because Blackwood was back in the net, but it was a late insurance marker to make it 5-3. That ended up being the final. It was another goal that Blackwood would have liked back. It ended up just getting beaten 5-hole by Carlo. It was not a good night for Blackwood, but as I said. But anyway, the Bruins win this game 5-3, and it was by no means an easy win, but they stuck with it. And again, they won the third period. They did what they needed to do to win the third period and win the game. And that's the last 3 games for the Bruins. And again, they had a lot of, guys getting on the score sheet. Frederick with a goal, Lazar with a goal, Steen with a goal, Carlo with a goal. Guys on the score sheet that they needed to get going. And again, the secondary scoring continues. They also got, their big guns involved. They got a big goal from David Pastrnak. They needed that. So, while Marchand and Bergeron and, Coyle was pointless and Smith was pointless, and, they got secondary scores involved to be able to make up for, maybe the big guys not having the biggest of nights. And, that's an important thing for this Bruins team that, again, continues in this new year.
This was definitely a complete week for the Bruins. Maybe one of the first complete weeks, honestly, of the season. And it was really encouraging to see. Again, maybe depending on how far the Bruins go, we'll take a look at this layoff and view it as a key point of the season.
Yeah,
I mean,
definitely.
it's amazing what some time off can do. And, this week really kind of proved that. Again, not the best opponents, but for a team that has struggled to get points this season, a solid week overall.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll take any points that we can get, and the Bruins got it done this past week with 3-0 to start the new year since the change to 2022, and that's really helped them in the standings. These 3 straight wins have really helped them in the standings. I want to quickly touch on that next because Boston is now moved into a playoff spot. And they had been out of that last wild card spot for most of this year, a little bit behind, but they've passed Detroit now. They also have 5 games in hand on Detroit. They've got 36 points through 29 games. They're in the second wild card spot in the Eastern Conference. They are 5 points behind Pittsburgh for the first wild card spot. And behind them is Detroit by 1 point, but they have 5 games in hand over the Red Wings. Philadelphia is 4 points behind them, but they have 4 games in hand over Philadelphia. And Columbus is 5 points behind the Bruins, but they have 2 games in hand over Columbus. And New Jersey is 5 points behind the Bruins for that second wild card spot, but they again have 5 points or 5 games in hand over the New Jersey Devils as well. So Boston has a pretty good point cushion in front of or ahead of everybody except for Detroit that's chasing them. However, they have 5 games in hand on the Red Wings, and they've got multiple games in hand on every team that is chasing them because, they've played so few games so far this year. So Boston is in a good spot now, it seems like, to be a playoff team and make the playoffs.
Yeah, and, it's amazing how quickly, like I said, how quickly things changed. And even with all these games in hand and where they are at right now, things change quickly for the Bruins. Things can change quickly in the other direction as well. So, it's good to see, but the Bruins need to keep this momentum going and moving forward, especially, as the schedule gets tougher.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of keeping this going, moving forward, and the schedule getting tougher, that's what I want to talk about next. I want to talk about this next week of action because, we've made a point to, while we're very happy that the Bruins are 3-0 to start the year and have picked up 3 good wins and whatnot, we do realize that the opponents haven't exactly been the toughest. They're, 3 non-playoff teams with the Sabres, Red Wings, and Devils. But moving forward, this schedule does get a lot tougher. And, they're going to be playing some really tough opponents here over this next week, starting on Thursday night with the Minnesota Wild, who are a playoff team out west right now. And if you this game will have happened by the time that you guys watching see this, and we'll know how this game goes and what the score is by the time you guys see this episode. But for us recording, this game hasn't happened yet. Minnesota is not going to be an easy opponent right now for the Bruins, who play a tough team out west. Minnesota's currently in the first wild card spot out west. They're going to be desperate for a win because they've lost a couple games in a row now, and not exactly in stellar fashion either. And they're only 5-4-1 in their last 10 games. This Wild team is going to be hungry to get back in the winning column and to get back on track here. So this is going to be a tough matchup Thursday night. Should be a very hard fought game.
And when you look at the standings of their own division, I mean, the Predators 21-11,
Yep.
Blues 19-9, and the Avalanche 19-8, and there's also a couple ties with all of those teams in there too. But overall, but generally speaking, this is not, fourth place in that division is not a reflection of how, poor the Wild have been playing or how much work they still have to do. They've played against some really good competition, and the Bruins have to be ready. I mean, this is a Wild team that is battle tested and,
Yep.
Plays well in, a tough Western Conference and in a tough Central Division. So this will certainly be a test. Their record is 19-10-2, but again, that record is deceiving. They have fought, in a lot of these games that they've played, and I'll be interested to see what the Bruins do, because to me it seems like Western Conference and hockey out west is a little bit tougher than in the East, truthfully.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and those teams, they beat up on each other, and
They do.
that's a different style of hockey, much more very physical hockey out in the Western Conference as opposed to the East. And when you look at that division, Nashville's in first place with 44 points. Minnesota's in fourth with 40 points.
Yeah.
1 through 4 is only separated by 4 points. So, Minnesota's literally a couple wins away from going from a wild card team to a first place team. And that just shows you how how tight that division is in the Central and how good all of those teams are at the top, kind of just, battling for position all season long.
Yeah, and it's just a testament to how tight these races are and how every game means something. I mean, you have the Wild, who are 4 points out of a playoff spot, and then on the other hand, you have the Bruins, who were able to get into a playoff spot because of their big swing this week. So
Yep.
You've heard us say it a lot today, but the races are tight and each game truly does matter.
Oh, absolutely. And things don't get any easier after Minnesota, because the Bruins then go on the road. And they have a very tough road matchup on Saturday night against the Tampa Bay Lightning. Tampa Bay currently leads the Atlantic Division, and obviously defending Stanley Cup champs, one of the best teams in the NHL. Bruins have played the Lightning once already this season, and it was an OT loss for the Bruins. But this is going to be a tough game, especially down in Tampa Bay. And, obviously the schedule here is as maybe lesser opponents, the Sabres and Red Wings and Devils were. This next stretch is against probably better opponents for the Bruins, with Minnesota in Tampa Bay and continuing beyond that. Tampa is going to be a tough matchup. They always give the Bruins a hard time.
Yeah, and trying to win against the Tampa Bay Lightning is trying to find a needle in a haystack. I'll be honest with you. It seems like Tampa Bay always gives the Bruins trouble, and the Bruins need to win on Thursday against the Wild in order for this to be a successful week, because they've been playing better, but I don't think that they're at the level of Tampa Bay yet. I mean, historically,
I agree.
over the past couple seasons, they haven't been at the level of Tampa Bay. So we talk about the big point swings and how tight the races are. That makes Thursday's game against the Wild more important, because I don't see us coming out of Tampa Bay with 2 points. Maybe force it into overtime, but that game on tough is going to be that game on Saturday rather is going to be very tough.
Yeah, absolutely, no doubt about that. And Monday isn't easy either. On the road at the Washington Capitals. Washington's had a very strong season this year. They were a team that a lot of people thought might kind of fall back a little bit. Hasn't been the case at all. Alex Ovechkin playing at an MVP caliber this season. Capitals have 20 wins already on the year. Second place in the Metro Division, 48 points, which is 12 more than the Bruins currently have. On the road in Washington, that is not going to be an easy game as either.
No, and we're lucky that it's not, a back-to-back.
Yeah.
But again, this Washington team is one that has historically given the Bruins trouble.
Yep.
Truthfully, I think the playoff series last year, although Washington did not play well, I believe that truly was kind of a bit of an anomaly because
Yep.
that was a Washington Capitals team like I had never seen it before and not for the better.
Yeah.
So I'm not gonna say that maybe a regulation loss for me on Monday. I don't know if we're predicting the games, but
You
truthfully,
can go
truthfully,
all you want.
I mean, truthfully, these two games right here are going to tell a lot about the Bruins and B also be, you know, really, crucial for them to at least get points out of. I would like to see regulation wins, but I just don't see it happening over these last two games or these two games here. I really don't. I
These
mean,
games feel
yeah,
like a real test
yeah.
for are the Bruins a Are the Bruins a good enough wild card type team that will probably be out in the first round of the playoffs but struggle against tougher competition? Or are the Bruins a legitimate team that can contend in the East? If you can't beat Tampa Bay or Washington, and they don't have to win both of these games, but they have to
No.
play well in both of these games. And I'd like to see them win at least one of them. And
Oh
if you
yeah.
can play with Tampa and Washington, then you're a contender in the Eastern Conference because those are two very good teams in the East. But if the Bruins get beat and don't look good in these two games against these quality opponents, then I won't look at the Bruins as anything other than a wild card team who are probably done in the first round.
Yeah, and not to think ahead here, but when you look at we've talked about this potentially being the last run of the big three.
Mm-hmm.
So for me as a fan, if they don't perform well in these games against the Lightning and Capitals, then that will also make me a bit sad because I won't see the Bruins making much noise in the playoffs if they really can't
Yeah.
get it together over this next week here.
Yeah, so after Washington on Monday, things get a little bit easier. The Bruins come home, and they have the Montreal Canadiens on Wednesday night, January 12th. That game was originally supposed to be in Montreal, but because of everything happening in Canada right now, with the massive restrictions and whatnot, they've brought it back to Boston. So it's going to be a home game for the Bruins against the Montreal Canadiens on January 12th. And well, let's just say this should be a very winnable game for the Bruins because Montreal is just absolutely putrid this year.
It should be a winnable game for the Bruins, but those are the ones that seem to trip up the Bruins the most.
Yeah. This should be a
Um,
game that the
yeah.
Bruins need to win. Like they need to win this
Oh
game.
yeah, absolutely. And it's a rivalry game, so Montreal will be ready.
Yep.
Boston will be ready. There's a certain element about rivalry games that even in the most lopsided matchups, it makes it seem extremely important.
Yeah.
So, although it should be a winnable game for Boston, this will be a test simply because of the high emotions. We've seen over the years, dropping the gloves back in 2011 and the goalies fighting and
Yep.
all this fun stuff every time these two teams meet. So although it should be a winnable game, it will definitely be a fun one. I don't expect it to be a blowout by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah. No, I'm hoping for at least a little bit of that Bruins Canadians feel to it for sure.
Absolutely.
And then to wrap up next week, or at least until we do next week's show, Thursday night they are at home again, this time against the Philadelphia Flyers, another team that's below them in the standings. They probably should beat, but Philly is not that far out for that wild card spot. So they're going to be pushing hard to try and gain a couple points in those in that wild card race.
Yeah, and again, this is a team that has always played the Bruins tough.
Yep.
I honestly had higher expectations for them this year, coming into this year, but
Yep.
now they're at a point where they've kind of rebounded, sort of like the Bruins. They've kind of rebounded and put themselves back in the playoff contention. So again, it's not going to be an easy game. They Philly is coming off a loss against Anaheim by 4-1 margin yesterday. They're
Mhm.
going to be eager to be looking to get back on the winning track and a winning streak because points really matter for them as well right now. So, although we see some winnable games on the schedule, I'm not going to take anybody for granted this week, especially the first two games in Tampa and Washington. I
Mhm.
think it is going to be a very tough week because you have the top two teams that are, you know, have a little bit more skill than the Bruins at this point in time. And then you
Yep.
have the back half of this week where you have teams that want to fight either A, to beat their biggest rival, or B, to, get a playoff spot and get those points. So it's
Yep.
not going to be an easy week at all, I think.
No, I agree. I think this is going to be a very tough week for the Bruins. And they're starting off with three straight very tough games, in my opinion, with Minnesota, Tampa Bay, and Washington. Those are all quality opponents. So, all right, Boston has 5 games. Thursday to Thursday here, Boston has 5 games. And that's obviously a lot of hockey, but get used to it if you're a Bruins fan because they've played, some of the fewest games in the league so far. So that means the rest of the year they're going to be playing a ton. And 5 games, 10 possible points. Out of those 10 possible points, how
Hmm.
many points do you want to see the Bruins get for you to be happy with this next week?
10. No, but realistically speaking, let's 6, assuming that
That
none go into overtime.
that
Or yeah,
6. That's my
yeah.
number as well.
I mean,
That's my number as well. I don't care how it happens. If the Bruins get 6 points out of these next 5 games, I'm good with it. Especially the quality of opponents that they have. Tampa, Washington, Minnesota, very tough. Philly, I think, is going to be a tough game. I would be happy with 6 out of 10 points here for this next week.
last week we wanted them to get off on a good start and get convincing wins. I think this upcoming week is going to be more about trying to stay afloat as well as being used as a measuring stick to see where they are for the
Yeah.
first two games.
Yeah, no, I
So,
definitely agree with that. This is a big test for the Bruins. It's a big measuring stick. We're gonna find out. Are the Bruins just one of those good teams that can beat up on lesser opponents and can win the games that they're supposed to win, but probably aren't going to do much in the playoffs and struggle against tough competition? Or are the Bruins a legitimate good team, maybe even great team that can play with the other top teams around the conference and really be a team that could contend? And this is going to be a big week as a measuring stick to see where this team is at. And again, they've got some really tough matchups. These should be some really good games. And there's a lot of games here. 5
mm,
games in a Thursday to Thursday stretch is not easy. But it's a big test for Boston. We'll see if they pass or fail. But I'll be happy with 6 out of these next 10 points. Um, I'd really like to see the Bruins be able to pull that off. If they're under 5, I think we got a problem. I think you're at a
yeah.
point where, okay, they're probably just beating teams that they should beat, and they can't beat anybody good.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge week in terms of the point swing. And also, the lesser teams are going to be ready to play. Will the
Yep.
Bruins be ready to play? And that's going to be the big question heading into this week, I think. And by the time the next episode happens next week, it'll be interesting to see what the outlook is on this Bruins team.
Yeah,
Because
you want
last
to
week,
come on again?
sure, last week we were a bit down. This week we're on a nice high right now with the success that the Bruins have had.
Hmm.
Who knows what this next recording will bring? It's really been an up and down season of for the Bruins so far. It's been an interesting season to say the least, and
Yeah, it's been a roller coaster, and we'll see if that continues or if we get at least a little bit of consistent upward trajectory here over the next week.
I think if the Bruins struggle this week, we'll get a bit more clarity about what this roster is
Mm-hmm.
going to be about, because I feel like right now this Bruins team, they've been playing better, but they still, I don't know, I still am a little bit apprehensive about where this team's going to go. If
Yep.
they play, I'm kind of starting to turning into you, not the good-looking hockey extraordinaire, but the guy who's pessimistic and kind of apprehensive about where this Bruins team can go. So if they have a rough week, then I'll say that this is where I kind of expect them to be. If they have a good week, then maybe I'll
Yeah.
get my hopes up again. But we'll see.
All right, well, that's going to bring us now to the end here of episode 49. Danny, it was a pleasure to have you on, as always. It's almost like you're becoming the co-host here. Uh,
I know, it's crazy, huh?
Great having you on again, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely, no problem. I had a great time. Thank you for having me.
All right, everyone, that's going to bring us now to the end of episode 49 with me and Danny Jaillet. Another big week for the Bruins coming up here. Obviously, they've started the season very well, but we're hoping that that can continue against much tougher competition coming up this next week. So that's going to be the big thing to watch for the Bruins now as they start to play some really difficult opponents. But thank you guys all so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Want to give a big thank you, of course, to Mark Allred and the entire team at Black and Gold Productions. This show is in partnership with them and would not be happening without their support. So thank you to Mark and everyone at BNG. You can check out all the writers at BNG at blackandgoldhockey.com. They're producing articles every single day covering the Boston Bruins, and also a great podcast network there as well with a bunch of different Bruins-related shows that are great to watch. So please check that out at blackandgoldhockey.com. Also, want to remind you about the links down in the description. If you're in the market for Boston Bruins apparel, NHL apparel from any team, or NCAA college apparel from whatever school you want to rep, there are 3 links down in the description to check out. It would be great if you would do that, and really does help out a lot and is much appreciated. But that's going to bring us now to the end of episode 49. Hopefully the Bruins have a great week coming up, and episode 50 is a great one. Hopefully we're talking about a lot of fun things and a lot of Bruins wins this next episode coming up next week, but we'll have to wait and see how it goes here for Boston. But that's going to bring us now to the end. Have a great week, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening, and go Bruins.